Welcome back to Restless.
Thank you. No, I'm kidding.
Oh yeah, we're glad to have you. Glad to have you. Yeah, so you've joined Matt, who you already know because he's the loudest one.
That's right.
We're actually just talking about his loudness right before the episode because he now has a son who's 18 months old.
Yeah.
Who is the loudest child he's ever met.
That's right.
One of them.
You know, I'll say this. He got the Italian volume gene. Yeah. So you can leave it at that.
But I appreciate Diane's subtlety. And she's in her calmness. And...
Yeah. When you're on the episodes, everything is a little more cohesive.
I'll try to keep your levels lower.
Please keep our levels lower. Yeah, I'm not that outgoing, but that's okay. So today's topic is one that I've wanted to talk about for quite some time, and that is, what's your dream job? Because I think a lot of young adults perhaps are unhappy with their jobs, or maybe they're striving for a dream they're not sure is attainable. So it's we got to talk about, how do we know if we should stay in a job? How do we know if we should leave a job? If we, what are the signs that we that this is the right job for us, and what kind of God's will is for that? But I first want to ask, because it's always fascinating to know, what was your dream job growing up? Like, what did you want to do?
Yeah, you want to start?
I guess when I was little, I loved those. I had an easy bake oven. So I would bake a lot.
And you bake?
Yes. So I baked. At one point I was like, I'll open up a bakery. But then you got to get real about your dreams, and I am not a morning. I'm not a morning person.
Oh yeah, it's a 4 a.m. wake up call.
I mean, if you own a bakery, you got to get up really early. You also have to know how to run a business and own a business, there's just all those. I don't know. I think your options become more and more limited as you get older, and
it's hard. It's hard to make a living as
exactly. And my parents were like, "You're going to college, and you're going to major in something where you can get a job, and that's it."
Nice.
And I said, okay.
Yeah. So you picked accounting, or they picked accounting?
I mean, I suppose I was kind of pushed in that direction, but, at the time, finance wasn't a good option. And, I mean, I didn't, doubt my parents in terms of their sort of
advice,
and direction. So,
well, the good news is that baking can continue to be a hobby.
Yeah.
Exactly. And as an 18-year-old, you know nothing. I mean, you think you know everything, but you know nothing. So I relied on my parents to direct me. Yeah. And my dad,
you had that presence of mind as an 18-year-old, that you knew nothing. You knew that you knew nothing as an 18-year-old?
I knew in about career.
Okay.
I thought I knew a lot of other things about life.
I did not have that presence of mind. Yeah, that's for sure.
But in terms of career, I mean, if my dad said something, I take him seriously. He's done very well in the business world, and he knows what he's about and what he's doing, and how to give people advice. And so, exactly.
Right. Yeah.
And then I took the classes, and I was like, I like this. I'm kind of nerdy, and this is fun. I can see myself doing this.
Yeah. Well, and that's good. I mean, because I do think that. I mean, I feel like I'm skipping questions here, but I do think that you shouldn't stay in a job that you're miserable in if you can get out of it.
Yeah.
So I'm glad to hear that you actually like what you've ended up doing.
Yeah, and I always liked school, so I enjoyed the classes, and I suppose if it was the wrong major and I was feeling really anxious about it, I would have probably switched majors, which is possible. Mm-hmm. But a lot of times too, my job auditing, I mean, I'm in public accounting, right? So I work at one of the big 4 firms. It is nothing like class or school too. So I mean, you really have to just take a chance and spend some time and not leave immediately. Just see how it goes, because most of the stuff that I learned on the job, I mean, yes, you have sort of the background from school, but it's just totally different than what you do in a classroom.
Yeah, totally. That's fair. And that's certainly true with priesthood. I'll tell you. Seminary was great.
Same idea, right?
Goodness, you learn so much more when you're actually in the field.
Yeah.
So much more.
Do you mean that in from the business perspective? Because as a pastor, right now you're is it fair to say that you're the CEO of a small business?
Yeah, I mean, we have a budget of probably $750,000 a year.
Right, wow, you guys are rolling.
No, I'm kidding. this is small. If you go to goodness gracious, St. Aloysius and New Canaan, I can't imagine they must be 5 to 10 million.
Yeah. I mean, they did just build a new school, sort of.
$90 million or something like that.
Whoa, didn't know it was that much.
Yeah, it's pricey.
Right.
But you can't anticipate all the conversations that you're going to have, all the problems that people come to you with and everything in seminary, right? I mean, I'm sure they prepare you in some ways, but just real life experience and...
Yeah, I mean, it's just different when you hear it versus when you do it.
Yeah.
Because we would, I mean, God bless our rector, who's a wonderful man, but he wanted to prepare us for absolutely everything we could possibly do. So like every moment, especially my last 2 years there, every moment was scheduled. Like we have to have another talk about this, another talk about that. Like he had a whole talk on like boilers. I remember, like, for example, he talked about the legal liability of snow shoveling. Because if you don't shovel and someone slips, you're not liable because it's an act of God. But if you do shovel and you don't shovel well enough and they slip, you're liable. So my theory is don't ever shovel.
Yeah.
Right? Just leave the snow on the ground. Let people slip all they want.
Yeah, that doesn't seem to track, does it?
No, that's not. That's not really the case. But okay, but I don't remember a single darn thing he talked to me about boilers. But now that I'm a pastor and have to replace one, I'm learning way more than I ever thought I need to know.
Yeah, I thought you had a boiler issue.
We're having a boiler. Yeah, we're having a few boiler issues. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. But how about from the spiritual perspective? Like, we said that you're basically the CEO of a small business. But I don't remember what the original question was. I guess, did you feel prepared from the spiritual perspective? Did you always want to be a priest?
No,
I didn't take either one of those.
I did not. Well, I'll give you both. Yeah,
okay.
I did not always want to be a priest. No. So, so when I was a little kid, I played mass, as a lot of little kids do. Grape juice and
fair enough.
Whatever. I think Ritz crackers, I think, was my thing.
Okay.
And
I'm relieved to hear they didn't give you unconsecrated hosts.
They did not. They did not. But I did always take up a collection at all my from what I recall.
That's awesome.
It's essential part of mass.
Yeah.
But my little sister wanted to be the priest. And I was like, no, you liberal, get out of here. But then you hit 11 and 12 and like girls are pretty. Oh wow.
Yeah, sure.
So the thought leaves your mind. So my goal growing up at that time was to either be a professional sports announcer or to be a professional rock musician, because I love music and as you know, I love talking on microphones.
Yeah.
It's kind of my shtick.
Yeah.
And
pretty solid at it.
That's what I hear.
You do it every Sunday.
Every Sunday, and sometimes during the week, like when we record wrestles.
Yeah.
But
well, now you get to do all three.
And that's what has amazed me, right?
That's
is that
true,
God never wastes even those desires, right? Because I'm playing guitar all the time at praise and worship sessions.
Yeah, totally.
And even as a pastor, I get to play it at least once a week, twice a week for some worship.
Thing you do at your church.
Yeah.
Cool.
And so God doesn't waste any of that.
Yeah.
Which is really cool.
Yeah.
And it's funny because even in between those two, while I was like 7 or 8, my burning desire was also to be a teacher. I used to play.
Which you also.
I used to play school all the time, and I would actually make tests for my little sister and brother, and they'd have to take the test, and I'd force them to do it, and they hated it.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I can understand that.
Little did I know.
Just
now,
for the record,
being
forced to take a test.
Yeah.
By your older sibling.
Oh, really? You're.
No, I'm just saying I would have hated that.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
But, yeah, so who knew? I'm now teaching 4 classes at a local Catholic high school.
Yeah, cool.
So.
Yeah, and even when you don't work in, like, what you would have envisioned as a child of, like, a sports announcer, I mean, just in general, I feel like with my job, yes, I don't do, I do public accounting, but you still, like, those other charisms and gifts that God has given you can still use them. Like, absolutely. I think he opens up doors and paves sort of like the pathway for you to be able to use your gifts for his kingdom and his glory and still have fun.
Yeah, he doesn't waste any gifts he gives you. Or he often doesn't waste desires he gives you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, so that's where I was going to go, which was like, what you basically just told us is there are 4 things that you like doing and you do all of them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you're like, and I don't know if you do them all, quote, professionally in the sense of like.
Yeah. I don't get paid to play music. No,
yeah. But, you know what I mean? But it is a piece of your ministry and like.
Yeah.
You are a professional minister, if you will.
It's far more rewarding than if I had been getting paid for it. Because there's no pressure to it and you're doing it for God's glory.
Right. And I think, right, like, because at the core of the dream job conversation is that age-old question of like, how do I discern,
Right.
And so the fact that you like a certain thing, like that actually plays a role. Mm-hmm. Liking a certain thing plays a role in your discernment. We'll say it one more time. Liking a certain thing plays a role in your discernment.
God works through our desires.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
But you have a fascinating story because you had some really far desires that you pursued for quite some time.
Yeah. So I went to college for music, for commercial music. So I was a songwriting major with a music business minor. And my dream was to be a professional musician, to either do that as an artist or write music for other people. And I, like I said, went to school for it, but then I actually pursued it after school for a while.
Right, you moved to Nashville?
Yeah, so I moved to Nashville for school. I made an album back down in Nashville. I had signed with a manager. Towards like the middle of that process, I had a radical reversion to the Catholic faith. But even that's like, it would be too simple to say like, well, I became a Catholic and decided to stop doing music. Because
that sounds like God wants to take you away from your dreams.
Yeah, well, and also that isn't really what happened. Like, when I signed with a manager, my manager was the former president of the Catholic, not club. That sounds like a weird way of saying it. But like the college group, right? The Belmont University Catholic group. And he was in the midst of a successful career, and he believed in my music, and we had, I mean, he believed in my music and decided to manage me for free.
Really?
Full time.
Really?
Yeah. Like, so he was basically betting on me. And I did not pull through. No, I'm kidding.
Well, your singles were pretty good.
Yeah,
so if you ever go on
YouTube,
YouTube, all of our listeners, please go Google Matt
Maybe
Speraza.
some more new music coming soon.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Oh,
Easter egg. Songs.
Easter egg. Nice.
But you know, he ended up leaving because he was like, "Hey, the company that manages John Mayer wants to hire me," and I was like, "By all means."
That's fair.
I was like, "By all means, go get paid." And admittedly, within 2 weeks, I had applied to Franciscan for the master's in theology after that happened, and like there was a shift in desires, but you know, long story short, when I had signed with Bryce, our plan was that I would be putting out like, basically like, you know, subliminal message Catholic music, which is just like not terrible pop music. Like I want, you know what I mean? Like I wanted to put out wholesome pop music that was still true to the genre, but not going to lead you to hell.
And that's a good goal.
Yeah. And it's still something that I think I could do. And there's a reason a lot of my music is still up. You know what I mean? Like, but so I did that, but then switched to getting a master's in theology because I found myself slowly but surely reading more theology books at night instead of writing songs. And that's how I ended up, you know, at Cardinal Kung teaching and working with Restless too. You know what I mean? Like I don't know if you realize, but Cardinal Kung and Restless coincided within like 10 days of each other. And so I ended up at Veritas as a whole, using all of the skills that I learned as an audio engineer for my music career to produce like 4 out of the 5 original programs we have.
Yeah.
You know, so like.
So God used that,
totally.
Your background.
Oh, totally. And whenever I explain it to people, I'm always like, you know, the Lord really used 2 things that I'm good at, but also like, which is that audio engineering component and theology. You know, like when I sit down to edit, I actually follow the conversation and, you know, whatever.
So, but let me ask you a question, because I've struggled with this myself.
Yeah,
you know, I mean, you think about the 2 things that I wanted to be. Both of them were really very much for my ego.
Yeah.
You know, I want to be that guy, you know, the guy who's the famous, you know, not Bill Buckner.
Yeah.
You know, he was a baseball player.
Yeah.
But that famous, you know, the famous Vin Scully, who was a great announcer.
Sure.
You know, but it was all for my ego. And
yeah.
So how much of that desire to be a musician was because of you want to be famous?
I got to tell you, like, right, boast of your weaknesses, right? There was certainly a point in my music career. Again, I had a massive aversion to Catholicism, where I remember telling people, like, some people have God and I have music. You know, like,
really?
it was a full blown idol.
Wow.
Yeah,
really?
yeah. And obviously that needed to be sanctified, redeemed.
Sure.
And it was, but you know, so like from the jump, yeah, I think a big piece of it was ego. You know. Which isn't to say that I also didn't love the craft, you know, or didn't love performing.
Right.
But eventually
we can have mixed motivations, I think, for doing lots of things in life.
Totally. And the thing is, you know, we've talked about and have done it together, you know, that I do praise and worship ministry with my wife, you know. And you know, I remember sharing that story and like that little sentiment that it was an idol with some of the CFRs, and I remember getting like a look or 2. but it really, like, the Lord really, really, really sanctified my relationship with music, which was through Exodus 90, that you could only listen to music that lifted your soul to God. And I grew, like, there was a period of time where I just abhorred pop music when I left it originally. But the Lord, like, he uses it still, you know, like, we regularly do praise and worship. And as a matter of fact, Renee and I are going to be doing it with
at our church,
at Heart to Heart, with your
very
church
soon,
this year, you know?
Awesome.
So, like, yeah, I think ego played a role, and the Lord saved me from that.
Good.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
So, you know, when we're talking about young adults, you know, a lot of times they feel torn because they're like, you know, should I pursue my dream job, the one that I feel God is calling me to, or should I be practical? Kind of like Diane's, you know, quandary, right? I've got this dream that I want to pursue, but at the same time, it's not going to pay the bills, and it's going to be a struggle. And so, I mean, how do you make that determination? Should I stay in my job that I like, but it's not great, or maybe I don't like it all?
Yeah.
What do you think? I don't know.
I mean, for me, I do think you have to be practical. I could give a different answer, but we do live in Fairfield County. Like, you have to pay your bills. It's very expensive. You know, down payments are hefty here.
Oh, yeah. To say the least.
To say the least. Rent is very high. You know, like, if you have a family, you got to feed them. You know, you have just buy a house. These things break down. So I do think you have to be practical. But I will say, like, I chose a practical path, and God has opened it in ways that I couldn't have imagined. Like, I started a National Rosary at my company. Sort of, we've got this, like, Christian Catholic group going on, and just, like, the ability to bring my faith to work, to actually have conversations with many of my coworkers, and I'm not going to get into the details because, you know, I don't know who listens to this, but of just, like, for those who are open to, like, really talk about, like, the ways that I have grown in faith, to give recommendations of books to read, podcasts, of going back to the sacraments, why it's important. Like, I've had so many of those conversations that, you know, like, the whole career of just the slog of the hours and, you know, working Friday nights, Saturday nights, totally worth it to, like, have that encounter 8-10 years later with this one person who was, like, really needing it and could have completely changed their direction in life. But also, like, what I've received from it, and just, like, you know, I started out in audit and client service, and then I had this, you know, was kind of getting unhappy, and you know, really wanted sort of a different position in the firm. Something came up that it wasn't what I anticipated. Ended up being, like, the best decision that I made. It's the current group that I'm in. I love it, but it allows me to pursue what I believe God is calling me to do outside of work, which is, like, you know, for example, this podcast, being involved in Young Catholic Professionals, the leadership team, evangelizing there, bringing people into that group. Teaching RCIA at St. John's, which I absolutely love. And, you know, you've gotten feedback of people of just, like, the way that, you know, obviously God working through me and them being open, but, like, how, like, my teaching has changed their perspective, you know?
Can I boast for a minute? We have a special diocesan award that we give out every year to the top volunteer in every parish. Diane won it this year.
Wow.
From St. John's Basilica. It's called the St. Augustine Medal.
Thank you. But, you know, I get such great joy out of doing that. Like, I'm not just saying that. I really do. It, like, fuels me. And so being able to do these things, like going to daily mass.
So let me ask you a question, though. So you get great joy from teaching RCIA, probably greater than doing, you know, accounting, right?
Yeah.
So why not? Why would that? What would hold you back from saying I want to pursue that full time and maybe teaching teaching theology in a Catholic high school or something like that?
Yeah, I suppose down the road, but I do think, you know, I want to live close to my family, and it's very expensive to live here.
So
you
the
know,
practical
like,
realities.
I mean, do I want to be here to, like, you know, to be around my nieces and to be an influence and all of that stuff? I don't think what I'm doing is any less than what I would be doing at a high school. I do extra, you know, like the RCA and that stuff. So I feel like I'm actually, like, I get the best of both worlds, and I get, you know, like, maybe the people who need the gospel the most are at, you know, these accounting firms or at these secular places.
Absolutely.
And, you know, you can leave your mark, you can leave your stamp, and just, like, every day ask the Lord, like, how you want, you know, I often ask of, like, just inspire me with any, like, conversation bits or whatever that, you know, like, these people might need to hear. And I've been edified through it. I mean, you just, you also like grow in virtue, just not even in you might not think of it as from like a spiritual aspect, but of like the discipline, the perseverance, all of those things that you learn at work that can be applied to family life and to like whatever you're doing for the church and your spiritual life.
That's, I think, an important point is that if a young adult is in perhaps a job that they don't really like, see it as training for virtue.
Right.
Because there's always something that you can
take and also there's always going to be something you don't like about any job. Mm-hmm. Like, there's no such thing as the perfect job.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? Like,
absolutely.
Like,
but also life is.
I mean, I know you love talking about boilers.
Yeah.
I know you do.
It is. I delight. I jump out of bed talking about boilers.
Yeah, you have one lecture from your time in seminary you really remember. It's that boiler.
Yeah, that boiler lecture. Yeah, do you know that blow down valve goes into the.
Right, exactly.
No,
exactly.
But I don't know where it's going.
Yeah,
you know what it is that unfortunately I think a lot of our modern culture tells young adults and young people, follow your dreams and you'll be so happy you'll never work a day in your life.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a lie.
Yes.
Right? You will, even if you like your
100%.
job very much, you will still work days, and there will be days where you're like, I don't really like this.
Yeah. And you've got to be disciplined. You got to persevere. You have to put in the long hours. I mean, I think the generations coming up are just more of like, okay, this is too hard, so let me go find something where I just like feel really great about myself and all these warm fuzzy
never happens
feelings.
24/7.
No.
It'll last for a week, but
growth comes through putting yourself in uncomfortable positions, because that's where the true learning comes.
Right.
And that's where you learn discipline and perseverance and courage and just overcoming yourself.
Yeah, I mean, so something I've been really praying through the last like 2-3 weeks has been Saint Joseph's role as protector and provider. And something that's sticking out to me in this conversation is, as provider, like Joseph up and left with his pregnant when they were betrothed. I don't believe that they were married quite yet, but they were betrothed, and it's like, well, that means he up and left his job that he probably had spent a good amount of time like building his customer base. I mean, that's a weird way to interpret the Bible, but the point is like, I sincerely doubt that Joseph enjoyed that. You know what I mean? Like there's hardship that comes with work, and what I'm trying to get at is like, well, how do you know what the Lord's calling you to do? Well, if you're Joseph, an angel appears to you in a dream and it's easy. But
for the rest of us.
But for the rest of us, it's like, well, responsibility. Like that's what the Lord's calling you to. Our Lord says, "Be perfect like my heavenly Father is perfect," and He doesn't call us to things that are impossible, because everything is possible with God. And so, like,
you make a really great point about responsibility and your responsibilities. In that, like, our job is not our vocation. There's a difference, right?
No.
There's 4 vocations, right? Marriage, priesthood, single life, consecrated single life, and religious life.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to see, even if you're a single young adult working in the world, you have to see your job as preparation for or working towards your vocation. So,
or
for example,
supplement to, like
right. So you're
aid in.
You're a married man with a son.
Right. It's
right.
Like,
so that is your first responsibility. Right. So you have to find a job that is going to fit that.
Right.
Right.
And to that, how did I end up working at Veritas? I was working at Cardinal Kung. At the time that I was working at Cardinal Kung, I was also editing part-time for Veritas and teaching piano. So I had 3 jobs. And the opportunity came up to work full-time for Veritas. And I knew that it would, one, allow me to leave the other 2 jobs behind. I would have 1 job, which would open time for family. And we wouldn't be losing money, And so this is kind of going 2 ways. So it's like the first one was like, I recognized that it was the responsible choice, which is not to say that I didn't want to work here. You know what I mean?
Right,
like there was also that. I was also excited about it.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, there was a great deal of surrender, because the principal at the high school I worked at, I had said to him, like, what's my deadline? Like, when do I need to tell you I'm not coming back so that you can start looking for my replacement? And he said, July 1. And I said, okay. And so I went to Steve Lee and I was like, we have till July 1, to figure out if this is going to work. And that was on like June 15th.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah.
2 weeks, let's go.
And so Steve had to raise my salary in 2 weeks. And so it was like, I set a surrender novena. My wife and I set a surrender novena, which is 9 times in a row saying, Jesus, I surrender myself to you. You take care of everything. Just like total abandonment. That's the concept. And so I think in peace with a career, that plays a role too. You know what I mean? Like recognizing the need for an abandonment to divine providence and saying like, Lord, where are you calling me? Mm-hmm. Where are you calling me? Because
he often calls us through open doors.
Right. And it was like that door swung open. We couldn't believe that this happened.
Yeah.
I was like, you're telling me you were able to like, get the funding for that in 2 weeks? Like, what are the odds of that,
So so a young adult who's trying to continually beat down a door that's not opening for him or her might know that this is not God's will. Right. And I think the other piece of discernment is to check our own heart and say, why do I want this? Is it because I'm trying to shirk a responsibility? Is it because of my ego? Is it because I want more money? Or is it genuinely because I want to glorify God through whatever gift, talent, or passion I have? Right. But I was going on to say about, so you're, as a married man, this was the direction in which your vocation was called. Even as a single person who doesn't necessarily have dependence upon your job, and to be like, well, it's okay if we're going to work minimum wage because I'm single. No. Right. You right now you're preparing for God willing marriage someday if that's your calling. And if you are called to marriage, get the job that you can like support a family on, get the job,
or at least put yourself on the track for it.
Right. That you're going to be like not necessarily successful in the world's eyes, but preparing yourself with the virtues too that you need. Yeah. To be a good husband, to be a good wife.
Right. Well, I'll never be a good wife, but
no.
Sorry, I'm a terrible joke.
It's just for that.
Cut that out.
No.
But so I think that's if I'm just being honest with you, right? Like that's something that I've grown in, like the call to responsibility. Like I don't look at my pursuit of music as the responsible choice. Like I was doing it because I wanted to, and like the Lord used it. You know what I mean? Like He used it, and He continues to. But again, perhaps it's just because of the state of life I'm in now. Yeah, it's like when I'm thinking about jobs, I'm always thinking about it through the lens of like, how do I live that vocation of provider? Yeah, like especially as a man, because like John Paul II talks about this in Familiaris Consortio. There's an exhortation from the Bishop of Phoenix called "Complete My Joy." Yeah, and there was this line in there that he wrote that was all about how one of the roles of the father is to make space for the mother to be mother, and what that looks like is providing. Like it is difficult for a mother to live that vocation out in full if she has to go to work 8 hours a day. So like making that space.
Careful, you're starting to sound like Harrison Butker.
Listen, that's okay.
I support this.
But you know what I mean? Seriously,
this is 100%. Like you cannot fully be yourself as a woman, I think, in the married state. Like I desire to be a stay-home mom. And that's why I think it is prudent.
And credit to you for staying at your job. Not that you're thinking of leaving. You know what I mean?
No, I'm not.
But in anticipation of that.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think that's an important piece of this discernment, right? Is that again, your vocation comes first. So a mother who may want to work outside the home, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, I think of like Amy Coney Barrett. The Supreme Court justice, who's one of the most phenomenal human beings on this planet, right? Right. Super smart, and it would, she has a mission really to judge rightly, for our nation and everything. Yes. And she's able to do it, but without sacrificing that primary vocation. And that's the key, is that can you do it without making that sacrifice of that primary vocation?
And John Paul II goes to pains to say that it is not that women have no right to work outside the home. That's not the situation. It's that, but rather that it is unjust to have
like an economy where
women are forced to leave the home.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Like they should have a choice.
Right. To be able to. But even there, it's like, so I know this might be a little bit off to the side here, but like in my discernment of careers then, taking into account basically what I owe in justice to my wife and children. Like not just like that concept of responsibility, but like it is an actual injustice for me to put my wife in a situation where she has to leave the home. Right.
That you're going to pursue your dream job, so she has to go to work.
Because I want to be a songwriter. You know what I mean? Right. And it's like, that would be an abdication, man,
I think, of your responsibility. I think the great example is, you ever watched the movie It's a Wonderful Life?
Yes.
Sadly, no.
Wait,
Really?
what?
You've never seen
What?
this?
Are you human? Are you American?
What the heck? Yeah.
All right.
It's a Christmas movie, and you should watch it.
We're having a movie night.
I mean, it's
with
got
Diane.
terrible angelology.
Okay.
Yeah. The
Awful.
angelology is. Yeah, but you're such a theologian. Yeah, it's very saccharine and very sweet. But
Yeah.
the whole plot is that George Bailey gives up all of his dreams because he has a calling that he has to take care of his wife and kids. He has to take care of the town of Bedford Falls, and so he can't travel. He can't join the army. Like he saved his brother, and so he saved his brother from drowning. So he jumped into a freezing lake and lost his hearing, which means he couldn't be drafted in the army, and he couldn't do all this stuff that he wanted to do. And the crisis point is he's like, my life is worthless because he says, I didn't do my dream job. And of course, the happy ending is your life's not worthless. You can see all the many people that have so benefited by your sacrifice. And it's true that, that is, maybe thousands of people on the West Coast are not listening to Matt Speraza's music, although they should be.
Yeah,
but
that's okay.
But Michael Speraza, your son, is being raised very well.
Yes, yes.
So vocation gives direction to self-gift.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember about a month ago.
That's a great phrase.
Thank you. You can quote that and put that in a short.
Yeah, I will.
Vocation gives direction to a self-gift. And that's something that I learned through an interesting experience I had a couple of months ago. There was for whatever reason, in our Dawson newspaper, every single month, there's an article about someone who needs a kidney.
Okay.
I don't know if you've read this.
No.
But look at the kid. There's always a kidney article. I don't know. Always. I was like, this guy needs a kidney. He's dying. And it's not something to laugh about, right? It's a very sad situation.
No, I'm sorry for laughing.
And so I was kind of like, oh, I got two. I might as well, I might see if I could donate one, right? So I emailed the doctor who's in charge of like this, and I'm like, what is it like to give a kidney? Like can you resume your duties? Like, what's going on? And he was basically like, some people recover after 2 weeks. Most people like a month or two, they can resume their former duties. And I thought to myself, it would be very generous to give a kidney, but I was also, can I take 2 months off from my vocation?
Right.
No, my vocation comes first, despite any other great act of charity I'd like to do. But my vocation is to be a pastor of this parish.
Yeah.
I can't take 2 months off just because I want to do something good.
That's a great example too, because there's an emotional reaction to that, which is like, but it's a kidney, you know what I mean? It's like this guy's life, but I think you're right. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where like there's the two.
And I really had a crisis of conscience because I was like, this is a guy's life. I mean, like he could die if I decide not to do this.
Right.
Now, of course, I'm not the only person who could donate the kidney.
But again, right? There's the difference between it's almost like the psychological conscience of like, this is how I feel, and just like actual prudence.
Yeah. Right.
So, one of the other things that I was thinking about.
Then we'll wrap up
in this.
That's great comment. No, go for it.
Is St. Augustine said, "Love and do what you will."
Yes, he did say that.
And wrapped up in love is responsibility, right?
John Paul II wrote a whole book, Love and Responsibility.
That's right, And so it's like responsibility is wrapped up in love, but if you are in fact loving, right, then your desires, totally valid reason to do something, so long as it doesn't
contradict your responsibilities.
Yeah, and your love.
Yeah. That's a great ending.
So
for all of our young adults, just to wrap up, and all of our adults, if you're in a difficult job and you have the opportunity to leave, see where God is going to lead you and discern that, right? But one way to discern that is to look at your responsibilities, look at the vocation to which God has called you, and see if this new path is in accordance with that vocation, and also see what doors God is opening. If God continues to not open a door, then we should probably say, this may not be his will for me at this moment. So pursue God's will, which sometimes might mean putting down our desires, but again, God will not lose any talents that we have. He's given it to us for the kingdom. He just may use it in a different direction. And what a beautiful gift that is. You can find us on Veritas Catholic Network, 1350 AM and 103.9 FM. Also on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. So tune in next time, click and like, and go look up Matt Speraza music.